This next-gen demo is presented by State Farm.
Day 2 of E3 here with Rev 3 Games at the Vivitouch booth. We are about to see a game that is the most likely to cause me marital problems. Elder Scrolls Online, one of my favorite franchises, now in massively multiplayer form. So we are joined by Paul Sage, creative director of Elder Scrolls Online. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so it is an MMO, and I've played this, and yes, there are things that are familiar about it, but it is really attempting to do something that is more in line with the single-player experience of Elder Scrolls, rather than following in the footsteps of the very established MMO conventions.
Right. One of the first things we started out with was, what do we like about Elder Scrolls and what do we like about MMOs? And, as we started, internally to compare those things that we like to play, it was the real-time combat elements, it was the highly interactive world, it was getting rid of a lot of the UI elements because we want you immersed in the world. And so really when we started putting all those things together, that's when we realized, okay, this is the experience we're going for, this is Elder Scrolls, and it's the next chapter in the Elder Scrolls saga.
No, it really does feel like Elder Scrolls. Let's go ahead and start running some footage. It does take place in an era much earlier than what probably most people have experienced, say, with Oblivion or with Skyrim.
Yes, so it's at about 1,000 years before Skyrim, right? And the reason for that is it's a period of history where there's just this kind of gap in the knowledge of what people know about the game, and that's a great place for us to say, okay, at this point players can write their own stories and unfold, but they get to play in places that they've only heard about in reading in books from the other games. And so it's a great homage to the history of the Elder Scrolls franchise. And
obviously we're looking at some footage right here. There will be locations and things that do look quite familiar if you've been playing the more recent single-player games.
Right, so there's, we kind of travel around Tamriel, which is where all the games have taken place, into a lot of the different provinces. So there's Skyrim for those people who played Skyrim. We go to Morrowind if you played Morrowind, and we even go all the way back to Daggerfall if you played Daggerfall. So yeah, we've updated the areas from some of the older games, like say Daggerfall, and I think our team's done a great job of bringing those assets kind of to the modern scene.
So if you've ever looked at the maps inside of the single-player games, Tamriel is really big, and there's a reason why the games tend to take place only in a section of that. I mean, how much kind of virtual acreage are we talking about here?
It's a lot. So there's a lot of, as you say, virtual acreage in the game. The nice thing though is it's so big that we can leave areas, as we kind of go down the road with a massively multiplayer game, you want to make sure that there's room to expand, and there is room to expand. But it's huge. That's, you're just talking about the overland. Then there's places like Oblivion that you travel to. There's the dungeons that you go to. It's massive.
So let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. It does involve real-time combat, which is, I think, quite unique. There are a handful of MMOs out there that have tried that. How does that work? It still isn't exactly the same thing as you're used to in a single-player experience.
Right. So because it takes place over the internet, you have to make an experience that kind of accounts for latency of different environments, and so we have to be very careful about that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that it has that same nitty-gritty kind of in-your-face feel of the combat. So when you swing your sword, you want to swing your sword. If you fire off a spell, you want to see it immediately in the world. And we definitely have tried to capture that. I think that the way we handle the latency, we do things little tricks like you can't miss in the game, and so I think it's really captured that flavor and feel.
What we saw right there, I'm willing to assume that was actually a location that people might have seen from Skyrim. But also there's the first-person mode. That's something that's recently been introduced, and now you can see the hands. I mean, this seems increasingly to be looking very familiar to what you've gotten from the single-player games.
Absolutely. When we started out with kind of that third-person feel. And then the reason we do that is because you want a lot of situational awareness, especially for our PvP component. But the nice thing about first person is it's super immersive because you're seeing things at eye level, and just details really start to pop in the world of first person.
So in terms of sort of growing and the growth of your character, I mean, how robust a character system do you have so that you're constantly getting that feedback from your accomplishments in the game?
Yeah, so when you start out, you get to pick one of 9 races, right? And you should be familiar with all the races from an Elder Scrolls title. But you also get to pick from 4 different classes. Once you pick your class choice, then that really informs like 3 skill trees, and then from there you'll just add new skill trees. You'll add new weapons. You can pick up any weapon you want to use in the game and use it. which is pretty different in the MMO space. You can wear any armor that you want to use, and the whole point of this is player freedom. So they have the freedom to choose how they want to grow their character, because that's what attaches you to the world.
And then in terms of that freedom, I think this might be one of the harder things for those people that are so used to the traditional games. How much can you play by yourself, and how much is designed to really, make some friends, go out there with a group and take out something more challenging?
So as we started designing it, we looked at what does a solo player want to do and how does a solo player want to play. So we've got lots of content if you want to play solo. If you want to play in a small group, like saying, I will play with my wife as an example. And so we have content specifically slated for that type of group. And then there's, for say a 4 group, and it gets larger and larger as we go out. So you can play any way you want to play, and I think that's the beauty of it, is if you're into that social experience, we give you lots of reasons to want to play with your friends.
And then last year when it was being shown here at E3, I remember there was a focus on the idea that you can discover quests. It's not as kind of laid out so clearly as you get in a lot of more traditional MMOs. I mean, how does that work? Is that still in the game?
So when we designed, kind of the way that what we call our content model internally, which is questing, works, we set out to say, okay, there's a place over here that I want to go to, that's further away from where I am. But along that way, we're going to sprinkle in all sorts of what we call points of interest, right? And so that's that feeling of, hey, I'm going to go, kill this monster over here that I'm supposed to kill. Instead I'm just, I see this thing over here that's an opportunity. I want to go do this now. And for me, that's kind of the secret magic of being able to just go where you want to go.
So, I mean, it really is just go explore. I mean, how does that work with kind of where the enemies are in terms of their levels? I mean, I could see walking into exactly the wrong dungeon and you really made a problem for yourself.
Absolutely, but in any game that you have, there'll be challenges, and the nice thing about that is, like, I'm coming back later for you, right? So you want to make sure you have that growth, because that lets you know I am actually growing in power in the game.
Which brings us to, how do you handle death in the game?
So death is one of those systems that goes back and forth with everybody.
We render death a system, not a finality. But go on there.
But what we try to do is we give you just enough reason not to do it. So we actually have a small take on soul gems, which, if you are familiar with any Elder Scrolls games, you have soul gems in the game. And so right now, you'll need a soul gem to resurrect on your own. You'll need a full soul gem to resurrect on your own. You'll also be able to resurrect your buddies like that. And if you can't, then you travel back to a way shrine. Your equipment might take a little bit of damage from that, some where you have to pay to have it repaired. But that's okay. It's not so steep that it will put you off the experience, but it's just steep enough to make, maybe I shouldn't have done that thing that I just did.
Speaking of the soul gems, this does bring up the idea of how diverse can you make the character? I mean, are you able to have magic and melee happen at the same time, or are you kind of locked a little bit more into those classes?
Really, after you choose your class, you can choose to have almost any magic you want. If you want to pick up a two-handed sword and be a lightning slinging sorcerer, you can do that.
And are some of the other conventions from the single-player games, like the schools, like all of those aspects? I'm still trying to get a sense of how familiar and how different that this game is going to be.
There'll be a slight difference in the schools of magic. This is a different time, but the reason for that is kind of starts to unfold in the game itself.
Having insurance isn't the same thing as having State Farm. With agents available 24/7, 365 days a year, they will help you get to a better state. Learn more at statefarm.com. All right, and then I think the key question, we now know that this is coming to the PlayStation 4. Is it also coming to the Xbox One?
Yes, it is.
Have you guys settled on sort of how you play this game? Is it subscription? Is it a one-time fee?
Yeah, we haven't actually announced our business model yet.
All right, well, that will be the next step. You already have me very, very interested. I hope to see more of the game. When are we hoping to be playing it?
Spring of 2014, but you can sign up for beta right now.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Adam.
Talk to you soon.
All right.